Steve. My name is Jack. I'm an alcoholic. I understand the videos are not going so well. Why is that? Why in God's name would you ever want to admit to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs? I certainly didn't understand what the reason for that was. I knew about confession. You know, I grew up knowing about confession, but that was to somebody who could not divulge anything. But why this? You know, I drank too much. That was the only problem I had. I drank too much. The hell did I have to admit to somebody the exact nature of our wrongs? I didn't understand it. But I knew that, you know, whatever you people were telling me was the right thing, because everybody seemed to be pretty content in this room and other rooms like it. And so there must be something to it. I was saying the other night that this program is a spiritual program, and it seems to me that if I did not have, or I did not meet the sponsor that I met the first day I came into Alcoholics Anonymous, I don't think I ever would have gotten sober. I can't prove that, but they say that God has a sponsor for each one of us in here. I certainly believe that. This guy was the most unlikely person that I would ever choose for a sponsor. First place, he was Presbyterian. And I didn't know many Presbyterians, and I didn't really think they drank. But he just... when I came in, there was no thing about 90 meetings in 90 days. And that started, I think, sometime after I came in. But he would not let go of me. I had all sorts of excuses not to go to meetings, and he would continue to meet with me when I got home from cookouts and birthday parties. And I often said I couldn't have gotten rid of him with a stick. He just was there, and he saved my life. And he started me on these steps, and I did my 5th step with him. And as the big book says, he was sane and quiet and had great human compassion and understanding. And that's what the big book says that we should be as a sponsor, and he was that. I'm not one for having a sponsor look down on somebody, and I don't think we should ever do that. I think we have to remember what we were like when we came in, and we had a young woman at our meeting the other night who I suspect is in her early 20s, and she said that she wishes that she were 41 and had 90 days of sobriety. That sounds a little funny, doesn't it? But we all understand that, because she thinks she's missing something. You know, she wants to go through those 20s and 30s drinking. She's missing something. Well, you know, we're the only people that can understand that. You tell that to some social drinker and he doesn't know what you're talking about. And we have that understanding. The book says that we lead a double life. Can you imagine that? Is there anyone in this room that doesn't lead a double life? Or didn't lead a double life while they're out there? Nobody, I suspect. We always had one side of us that we wanted to show to the world, and another side of us that was a secret. And I think for the first 6 months that I was in Alcoholics Anonymous, I would walk around just slapping my head, remembering things that I'd done. Oh my God. Oh, did I really say that to that person? Or did I really do that? It just the nightmares kept coming back and kept coming back. You don't have to be specific about it. You all understand what I mean. The stupid, insane things that you do, the things that we say, the spectacles that we make of ourselves, all that stuff coming back. And I just couldn't believe it. I don't think the fifth step is something that we do. I hear some people say, I have 2 sponsors, 3 groups. What do you have 2 sponsors for? Well, one sponsor I do with my drinking, and the other sponsor is my sex life. Well, that's wonderful, you know. And that just shows to me that that person does not want one person to know all about them. And it's not a drunk-a-log. The fifth step, you don't do at an open meeting. I've heard that too. Well, I didn't take the fifth step, but I speak at a lot of open meetings, so everybody knows my story. That's nonsense. That's nonsense, in my opinion. One of the things that happens to alcoholics, I believe, is that we become very isolated. And because nobody really wants to drink the way we drank. I mean, I really couldn't get a lot of people accompanying me down to New York City at 11:30 at night. I couldn't do that. They said, "Where are you going?" I said, "Well, I'm going down to the city." "Jack, it's almost midnight." "Well, I know, but, you know," and so I'm isolated. I go down by myself. Let's get another, dozen cans of beer. Why? We just went through a case. I know, but, come on, And we're really not very trustworthy, we're, at least I'd run out of money, and if you heard me say it once, you must have heard me say it, 100 times. "Hey, Tom, would you mind cashing a check for me?" "All right, Jack. Listen, hold on to it for a few days, would you? Nothing serious. It just says stuff's got to clear, "Okay, well, when do you want me to put it through?" I guess a week, be all right, And, nobody really wants to hang around with you when that happens, You're broke, you're miserable, you're doing things that nobody else would do, and you're isolated. Just isolated. And I would drink in isolation. That was very comforting. Oh, one St. Patrick's Day, I said to my wife, I said, "I'm going to stay home tonight, St. Patrick's Day." I got a dozen cans of Guinness and a dozen cans of beer, put on my Clancy Brothers records, and slipped down into the chair. It was a wonderful St. Patrick's Day because I didn't go out and get loaded, and I didn't go out and embarrass myself. And I mean, there were other St. Patrick's Days that, I remember being carried in horizontally from one St. Patrick's Day party, and my mother looked at me like I'd had a heart attack. "What's the matter with him? He's drunk." "Is he really?" "Yes, he's drunk." So this was a good one. The isolation was okay because I didn't have to explain myself all the time, you know? So, just drop in a bar, have a couple of drinks, get the buzz, and do a lot of drinking at home. And I was isolated when I came in here. And you people made me feel so welcome. And you told me that I had to take the fifth step. And confession comes right to mind when I think about the fifth step. But confession is really something entirely different than the fifth step. For example, I never said in a confessional, bless me, Father, for I have sinned. I had a resentment last week. The priest would say, a resentment? You don't say. I've had several myself this week. Or, a priest never shared with me what he had done. Never happened. Priest never said to me, I did something like that once. Never said that. They just do ego te, absolve, it's an entirely different ballgame. For those of you who think that confession is a fifth step, I think are sorely mistaken, missed the whole point. I hear a lot of talk in AA when discussion of the fifth step comes up as to where we took it, how we took it. Diners, boats, back of cars, parks. I don't really think that's where you do it is really of no moment. We once had a guy on my group said, when you take the fifth step, you should rent white tie and tails. And I think that's a pretty good idea because it's that serious a step. And it's that serious an occasion. But where you do it. Who you do it with, I think, is important. I think unless there's a very good reason for it to, otherwise it should be done with your sponsor. And not be cut into any halves or parts, but have the sponsor hear the whole thing and share with you what I think a lot of reasons why people have two sponsors is that perhaps two piles of dung doesn't smell so bad as one large pile of dung. But you can spread it out that way. But I don't think that that's what this is about. How do you know if you've taken a good fifth step? Well, the Big Book, it gives us a checklist. And it's called the 7-5 checklist. And it's on page 75. So it's easy to remember. And there are 7 things that are supposed to happen to you when you do a fifth step. And they list them out. It says we can look the world in the eye. Now that may not seem like a big deal to somebody, but to me it was enormous. Because I couldn't look anybody in the eye. Strangers. Ooh, scary. Scary looking people in the eye, when you walk along the street. Scary. Ooh, they look back. Ooh, what did I do to them? No. Then if they smiled, forget about it. I was a basket case. Couldn't look people in the eye. And I think I said last week, I walk around like I was looking for nickels. I was always looking down. Second one is we can be alone at perfect peace and ease. Be alone at perfect peace and ease. We know that the worst company you can keep is yourself, particularly in the beginning. Because then the committee starts meeting upstairs and they say, I think you're missing a lot of good times out there. You could really, all you have to do is watch it and, don't drink as much as you used to. Just get a nice glow on and stop. You can do that. You've stopped many times. And that's what happens when we're alone, particularly in the beginning. That monkey is on our shoulder, keeps whispering in our ear, you're not really an alcoholic. And you jump too soon, and you've got plenty of good drinking left in you. And these people are all crazy, Listen to them. They've been hospitalized. They've been this, they've been that. You're not one of them. You're different. That's what the monkey keeps saying. And then when we take the fifth step, we can be alone at perfect peace and ease. That's a great miracle. To be alone at perfect peace and ease. And we can do that. And that's what happens. It's one of the benefits of the fifth step. The book tells us that. Isn't that nice to, read a book, sit around, think, meditate, watch the grass grow, whatever. You can do that in AA. You can't do that if you're drinking. Can't do it. Our fears fall from us. That's one of the other things that happen to us. I think that because we really have a dependence upon God, and the fears that we had, that we spoke of in the fourth step, they begin to fall from us because we confront them. The fear of speaking at a meeting, the uncertainty that brings together fear in our lives. If we're not sure of the outcome, we're terrified. That's the way alcoholics are. We're not sure of the outcome, we're terrified. But, the third step tells us that really we don't have very much to do with that. So those fears begin to fall from us. And that's another benefit of the fifth step. We begin to feel the nearness of our Creator, because we have to admit to God, to ourselves, and to another human being. Now, I don't think the order of that step is any accident. I think first we have to admit to God that we have these defects and that we can't continue to run our life this way. And we have to admit that to Him because we've established a relationship with Him. We've asked Him for help. We asked Him for help in the second step. And we made a decision in the third step. And now we're making an admission in the fifth step. And this fifth step is the only time that we really call God by His true name. It's not God as we understand Him. It's not power greater than my own, but it's God. First and last name, God. And we admit to God the exact nature of our wrongs. And so that, I've never done anything like that. I've never said, whoever you are and wherever you are, and there's a lot wrong with my life. I never did that. But I think you have to establish that relationship because you're going to ask His power in the sixth and seventh step to clear up these resentments and these fears and this dishonesty and this lying and the problem with relationships. You're going to ask Him to clear that up in the sixth and seventh step. You can ask Him for that change in personality in the sixth and seventh step. And we begin to feel the nearness of Him because we're able to get through this fifth step. We're able to really be honest with our sponsor and tell him all about the nooks and crannies of the past. We're able to do that. We begin to have a spiritual experience, the book tells us. And I think a spiritual experience is best described in the big book as a change in personality. And we begin to change the personality because we begin to realize that, there's something wrong with us to have this kind of anger in our lives. There's something wrong with the way we communicate with our children or with our wives or husbands or boyfriends or girlfriends or mothers or fathers. There's something wrong with this rage that we go into. That's not the way to live life. So we begin to have this personality change. We begin to feel this spiritual experience. The feeling that the drink problem has disappeared will often come strongly. I suppose it was about this time in my sobriety that I began to have those... First of all, I thought you were all lying to me when you said that there would be a release, this miracle of a release from drinking. I thought that you all had white knuckles and you all just had to go through life and you really wanted to drink and you couldn't drink and you belonged to this club and they wouldn't let you drink and that was it. And it was going to be tough. I really believed that. I didn't believe that there was a release from drinking. I didn't believe that that something happens, that the power greater than your own comes down and has this release from this terrible, terrible compulsion to drink. And then one day, I was driving the car, and it was about noontime. And I suddenly realized that I had not thought of a drink for the entire morning. Now that may not seem like much to some people, but to me, it was incredible. It was incredible. I said, holy mackerel, this thing really works. A whole half day. And I'm not thinking about drinking. I'm not thinking where I'm going to go to lunch so I can drink. And then a few days after that, driving along and suddenly it's 4 o'clock. And I have not thought of a drink until 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Incredible. And then the whole day goes by and I haven't thought of a drink. And I think it was about the time this fifth step was being done by me. The feeling that the drink problem has disappeared will often come strongly. And it did to me. We feel that the seventh and last thing that this fifth step talks about is we feel that we're on the broad highway walking hand in hand with the spirit of the universe. And I don't think the term broad highway is any mistake on Bill's part. Because I think all our lives we've been told, walk on a straight and narrow. I don't think there's an alcoholic worthy of the name that can walk on a straight and narrow. We need a broad highway. We really need a broad highway. And you can drift to the right or drift to the left, but just stay on the highway, And it's not so important that you be on any straight and narrow, but just be on that broad highway. And walk hand in hand with the spirit of the universe. I think that's such a comforting thing that happens to us. And I felt that, I'm on the right track here with this fifth step. I'm where I'm supposed to be. I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. This really makes a lot of sense, this Alcoholics Anonymous. It's I'm comfortable. I don't know. My life was spent putting out fires, putting out the brush fires, things that I'd done, things that I'd said. And now I'm in AA for a few months. I did the fifth step, and I really begin to feel comfortable. And it says at the end of this that we thank God from the bottom of our hearts that we know Him better. And I truly knew God better when I finished this step. I truly believed that He was there to help me, and that I could rely on Him, and that these fears could fall away from me, and my feeling of isolation was going. I had a real relationship with this sponsor of mine. He was a wonderful human being. Presbyterian or not, he was good. He was a wonderful, wonderful guy. He was my friend. A friend that I'd never had like that. Just a terrific, terrific guy. And I had come to know that not the God of my childhood, not the God of my church, so there's certainly nothing wrong with my church, but I had come to know Him that He could work in my life. And these things came to pass for me. And they will come to pass for you. When the feeling of isolation began to leave me, there's a certain apartness that alcoholics feel, I believe, with the rest of the world. They say it's like you come down from Mars and you look around and you don't recognize anybody, so therefore you really must be from another world. But that apartness goes, it leaves us with the fifth step. We feel we're really members of Alcoholics Anonymous. It's we've got somebody that the book tells us that it is the beginning of a true kinship with man and with God. I think we have to admit these things to ourselves as well as to another human being. We have to say, my life has got to change. And we have to admit that the way we're going is not the way, it's going to lead us to another drink. And we have the help of our sponsor, and we have the help of the members of our group. Unlike other diseases, alcoholism festers in isolation, and it's healed in community. AA meetings are so spiritual. It's I mean, the power that comes in an AA meeting is just incredible. And that's where we heal. And we don't heal alone. You know, sometimes people have a disease, they say isolate them. Not alcoholism. It's very bad. And the fifth step drops that feeling of isolation. Another benefit we get from the fifth step, I believe, is that we find that we can be forgiven. And we can forgive others. When you do the fifth step, or when I did my fifth step with my sponsor, and I told him these terrible things that I'd done, terrible things that the way I felt, and he just, yeah, well, you know, I did that. That's not so bad. And, you know, you can forgive yourself because you realize that other people have done the same things and sometimes worse. It's a feeling that the fifth step, I think, is perhaps the most important steps that we take. The benefits are so wonderful. Another dividend is humility. 12 and 12 says we get a clear recognition of what and who we are, followed by a sincere attempt to become what we could be. To find out what and who we are is, you know, I always thought I was a guy who, you know, nice guy who drank too much. I didn't realize that I had deep-seated resentments, that I had problems with fears, that I had problems with relationships, that I had problems with honesty. I didn't realize that. And I find out in the fifth step because I'm able to talk to my sponsor about it, just who and what I am. And we can't do it by ourselves. We know that. You know, the book tells us that self-appraisal is really not the answer, because we've been doing that all our lives, and my conclusion was I was okay and I drank too much. Well, that's really not the that's not the way we're going to recover in this program. I think there's a certain amount of embarrassment that comes with the fifth step, and I think that's a good thing too. You know, be embarrassed about the things that you did, the things that you said, how you treated people. There's nothing wrong with that. I think that has a very healing property to it. Embarrassment, when you admit it to another person. You don't get embarrassed when you admit it to yourself, but you admit it to another person, and there's a certain amount of embarrassment to it. And that's good. I think it's very good. And if you can be honest with your sponsor, if you can be totally honest with him or her, then you can be sure that you have been honest with yourself and with God. And I think that's what we're after. And it's a great, we begin the process of the spiritual surgery. We begin the process of recognizing and admitting these spiritual ills that have really, when we really found out that we were not just simply a nice guy who drank too much, that we had serious problems, and they had to be addressed. And Mary Ann gives me these questions that I answer. I have no idea what the exact nature of my wrongs means. There's no question mark after that. Just a statement. I think you got to get specific in your fifth step. An exact nature of the wrongs is no accident. I think you have to get specific, and you have to tell your sponsor exactly what you did. It obviously refers to defects of character, but it's the exact nature of them, how it happened, how it arose. You know, I think that's so important to us. I'm angry with so-and-so. Well, under what circumstances did you become angry with? Tell me about this situation that arose that made you feel this way about him. This guy Brown in the big book, you know, that you hate so much because he wants to steal your wife and told her about your girlfriend and wants to take your job at the office. How did that arise? What were the circumstances under which that happened? I think that's what's meant by the exact nature of the wrongs. Exactly what happened. Well, I stopped feeling so different, so unique when I do the fifth step. I really think that's what I've covered. By the feeling of isolation will disappear. And you're not unique. And your sponsor will tell you that you're not unique. And the old saying is, if it had a name, then somebody must have done it before you. I think that's so very true. So, yeah, that unique feeling, that's a dangerous feeling, the unique feeling that we find that, you know, I'm different. I remember one time I came into AA and I looked at all the faces in the room and I said, these guys are all crazy. They're all nuts. You know, who's been in a hospital, who's been here, who's been there. Everybody's a quarter of a turn off. You know, the hell am I doing here? Nice guy like me. You know, I shouldn't be amongst these hoodlums. This is terrible. And you know, I was different. I was unique. And then some guy told me, we were talking about, you know, drunkalogs. And he made a simple statement to me. He said, nobody has a horror story anymore. And you know, that's true. Nobody has a horror story anymore. Very few horror stories. With the exception of Frank Silverstein, probably nobody has a horror story. You know? But there are no horror stories, you know? I think, you know, most people recover just in time before that horror story begins. It's enough horror for us, you know? I came in a Chappaqua group, and I listened to a guy's story one night. I swear to God, I think the most trouble he had was that he wore the same shirt twice in 2 days. And that was enough for him. And I think he was sober about 7 years, you know. I listened to a woman, I went out, I think one of the first times I went out speaking. She told her story, and she was the wife of a very wealthy executive who lived in Chappaqua. And what her entire story was, I had done more than that when I was 16 years old. I mean, I was beyond her by mega beyond her when I was 6, and this one was sober about 10 years. And you know, it's amazing how people help you in this program. That woman did so much for me. I said, my God, if this woman had enough with that, but I got to be out of my mind to drink with what's going on in my life. You know, I got to be crazy. Truly I was, but, you know, just those simple things that help that feeling that you're unique, and we all come in here with it. You know, I'm not as bad as, I'm okay, I just, you know, my story, I got drunk and I came into AA and I really shouldn't have done that. And, you know, I thought I was going to die. So, number 3, my sponsor says learning to trust is one of the many benefits of doing the 5th step. I believe that's true. Again, that feeling of isolation that we have when we come in here. Now I'm going to trust somebody. I'm going to trust somebody with my deepest, darkest secrets, and that person is going to know me. And the nice part about having someone know you that's in your group or that you see quite often is that the moment you begin to wander, you know, all he does is look at you. You know, whoops, all right, I'm sorry, I didn't mean that. And it keeps you on the straight and narrow, or broad highway, depending on how you want to read that. But I think it's important to have somebody that you're close to do this. You can trust him, and that he can always keep an eye on you. You know, he knows you. There is somebody in this world that knows all about Jack Keegan, and he is the only person who knows all about Jack Keegan. You know, there are people who know parts of Jack Keegan, but this guy knows everything about Jack Keegan. And that's comforting. That's comforting. Because I can call him up with any problem and talk to him about it. Suggest using the how, H-O-W, of the program when doing the 5th step. Honesty, openness, and willingness. Well, if you're going to sit down and spend a time with somebody to do a 5th step, honesty is a prerequisite. I mean, if you're not going to be honest with them, it's a waste of time. And there's no reason not to be honest, really. And openness, tell them everything, and willingness. There's a lot of willingness in Alcoholics Anonymous, the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. We're entirely ready to have, and willing to make amends to them all. A lot of willingness in this program, which I think a lot of us never had before. We were always keeping things close to the vest, and certainly not being open with anyone. And I was honest when it suited my own purpose, you know. I was honest for that, but, you know, if dishonesty was easier, then I would be just as well dishonest as anything else. But in the 5th step, you can't do anything but be honest, open-minded, and willing. And there was a friend of mine in Canada who was and in his group they had a little Frenchman who, no matter who spoke, and no matter who, this guy could be a trustee from General Services or what, no matter who it was that spoke, this guy would go up to him at the end of the meeting and kind of dress him down, and he'd say, remember, be honest, open-minded, and willing. And that's the how of AA. And he'd kind of like salute, and away he'd go. And he never failed to make sure that every speaker knew the how of AA. Honest, open-minded, and willing. And those are 3, that's what we talk about when, certainly we talk about the 5th step. 5, can I do the 5th step with more than one person telling a few secrets here, a few secrets there? Will it be as effective? Well, there we go with the 2 piles of dung, you know, or 3 or 4 or whatever. You know, one large one smells terrible, and we don't want that, you know. So if you do 2 or 3, it don't smell so bad, and then you can say, I really wasn't that bad. But no, I don't think you can do that. Although you hear many people say that. I have 2 sponsors, you know. I have a relationship sponsor. Huh? That's always a good one. Huh? That's always a good one. A relationship sponsor, and then I have my AA sponsor, and which is all really nonsense. The the only relationship that we have to worry about is our relationship with our Creator, and if that relationship is in good shape, then we are in good shape. So, no, I don't believe that you can tell a few secrets here and a few secrets there. I don't think that that prevents you from going up to somebody that you trust at a meeting and say, "Listen, I want to talk to you about this problem that I'm having," and and get some advice from that person. I think that's perfectly all right. But I don't think the fifth step should be divided in any way. I think the person that's doing the fifth step with you should hear all the blossoms, all of them, and smell the whole thing. And that's the way I think it should be done. A lot of people come up, because I hate the term old timer, as members of my group know. So I choose I choose seasoned member of Alcoholics Anonymous. And as a seasoned member of Alcoholics Anonymous, I have a lot of people come up to me with questions that I can't answer, but that doesn't mean I won't answer them. That they ask me about these relationships that they're having, or what should I do with this? What should I do with that? And I always, I may not be always right, but I'm never in doubt. I was told if you want spiritual growth, you have to clean house first. Well, this is the first house cleaning step that we're embarking on. And if there's going to be spiritual growth, if we're going to learn to accept life on its terms, and that's my definition of spiritual growth, we have to clean house. Because if we don't, those things just live in our heads. And we cannot, if I've got all this junk that I keep slapping my forehead about, and I've got all these things in my head, and I've got all these stupid things that I've been doing over the past 20 years before I came into AA drinking, I cannot have any spiritual growth. I cannot let the power come into my life, because it has to come in through my head. He has to come in through my head. And if my head is cluttered with things of the past, it can't get in. It can't get in. The mind is a one-car garage. And if you've got a car parked there, you can't come in. You can't come in. So you have to clean house. You have to get it out. And they say that nature cannot stand a vacuum. So if you clean house, something else has got to come in. And hopefully that spiritual growth will come in. That ability to accept life on its terms. We hear that term so often in Alcoholics Anonymous, and it's so meaningful. It's something I never even gave a moment's thought to when I was out there. Accepting life on its terms. The way I accepted life was I tried to manipulate life. I don't know if I told you this story, but if I did, forgive me. When I was first around AA, there was a guy in our group by the name of Tommy Fox. Tommy had 10 children, and I forget what he did for a living, but he was not a wealthy man by any means. And he was telling a story around the tables that he'd made an application for a bank loan to put an extension on his house, which you might imagine. They have an expression about that. He screwed himself out of the house. And that's terrible. Just a little joke. At any rate, he made this application to the bank for an addition to his house. And he said, I'll never forget, he said at the meeting, well, we'll see what God has in store about my addition on the house. I couldn't believe my ears. I thought, well, you got to bribe the banker. You know, you have to take him to lunch, offer him money, and you have to make sure that you get that loan. You can't accept what, I mean, that's crazy. This guy needed an addition on his house. You got to manipulate the banker. I don't know what you do. Get something on him, you know. Threaten him, you know. Have somebody call him. You do anything, but you got to get that loan. That's not the way Tommy looked at it. Tommy looked at it as that if God wanted him to have the addition, he'd have the addition. To be honest with you, I don't know whether he got it or not, but that's not the thing that amazed me. The thing that amazed me is that this guy was living life on life's terms, and I didn't know it. And I didn't know what he was talking about, and I thought he was crazy. And I thought he should be locked up. First of all, for having 10 kids, but crazy to accept life the way life is dealt to you. It's just a totally not the way to do it. But you know, I find out that that spiritual growth is how we enjoy life. You know, God. How many times have you heard at an AA meeting, we'll see what God has in store? I mean, that's spiritual growth. To be able to do that and not manipulate life and not pray for things for yourself. Boy, I'll come to that in the 11th step, but that was something I really, that was an amazing thing to me, that we don't pray for things for ourselves. And we'll see what we're trying to get, just as an aside, we're trying to get these lawyers groups throughout the state. Lawyers are very difficult. I think it's priests, doctors, lawyers. I think in that order, you know, the most difficult people to get into AA. I'm sure Jimmy would say cops or whatever, but it's lawyers are difficult. I was difficult, and so we're trying to get these groups throughout the country to form the lawyers' assistance programs to get the lawyers into AA before they really hurt somebody. You know. And if anybody can hurt people drunk, it's a lawyer. Let me assure you, it's a lawyer. They can really hurt people drunk. I mean, you know, you put your trust in lawyers, and they have usually use of your funds, and if they're into alcohol and drugs, I don't have to tell this group how much money you can go through very quickly. I always love that bumper sticker on the back of the Volkswagen that says, "My Cadillac is up my nose." You know, it's so what we're trying to do is to get them before they do some harm. So it'll be 2 weeks, and I'll be doing a 6th step. Okay? Thank you.